Hello everybody, welcome back to Fanblade. It is day something, and it's video number something else. If you're keeping track of this, then send me an email, because to be perfectly honest, I'm not even too sure what day of the week it is right now. Let's take stock of where we are up to. Bodies are carved, bound, sanded, sort of a little bit rough, need a bit of work. Necks are carved, one of them's getting frets and one not. Logos, veneers and everything are on, very rough sanded, need a bit of work. And the pickups are made, potted, very rough, need a bit of work. So we've got a bit of work ahead of us. I think I'm going to start with the necks. I would like to get some frets in this one today. This is, very rough. I think this is still 40 grit. Raw from the carve, need to sand out the headstocks. With the logos and the veneer and everything on there, I'm not going to go in as aggressively as I would normally to try and flatten out a headstock. I'm going to go with I'll start with 120 grit sandpaper and just take that down little by little, because that's kind of an important thing that I want to get right. So things like frets and neck pocket transitions and all the things just need to be finessed and made to be good. The weather today I would describe as roasting. By the end of this you can expect to see sweat lines running with sawdust all over me. I'm going to be an absolute mess. But being covered in sawdust is kind of my natural state, so let's get on with it. Okay, looking a lot nicer, feeling a lot nicer certainly. I love the way those logos have come up. I'm not that impressed with my book matching. You can see the line basically. I have to be a bit more careful next time I do this, which you could say just about everything that I've ever done. Anyway, now I'm going to mark out the dot positions, or the finger positions for the fretless bass. Now, I'm going to stick white dots on 3rd, 5th, 7th, etc., but on 1, 2, 4, 6, etc., black dots, just so that you have a marker for every position and it's easy to tell where you are. It's a system that works really, really nicely on the 3-string bass that I built last year. Marking them out is a little bit interesting though, because I can't just take my measurements here and mark them along this edge. These are the measurements for the center line, and if you are measuring from the center line and simply taking those measurements straight out, what you wind up with is a parallax error. That, essentially. So what I'm going to do is mark the center line, mark the positions, then I'm going to use this thing here. This has a name. I don't know what it is. Adjustable square, something or other. pick up the angle off the nut there, and then I can transfer the markings on the centre to the edge, so I know exactly where to put the dots, so that I don't wind up playing fretless bass out of tune. Because fretless bass out of tune is not allowed. So once the dots are in, cut them to shape. I'm not going to glue them in, because the very next thing that I want to do is essentially give this its final sand and then put some finish on there. My obvious finish is going to be CA glue, and that's going to wick in and glue the dots in as I go. I don't want to wind up with a blob of glue that I have to then sand out, because things can get a little uneven, especially if I'm about to finish it. Or worse still, and because I do this all the time, is when you've already finished it and then you put a glob of glue on top of that, and you can waste a lot of time fixing those mistakes. So, not going to make them. Just like that, they are sanded out to 240, and they are ready to start finishing. Obviously, super glue, got some cloths, got some gloves, fan is going, and I'll open the door a bit later on. It's quite hot today, but it's not humid, and this is perfect, because what it means is that I'll wipe the stuff on. It's not going to cure instantly like it would in high humidity, but it's going to dry pretty darn fast. So I should be able to get a nice, smooth, even coat on. It'll be dry in minutes, and by the time I've done one, I can do the other and just cycle back and forth. I'm not going to put a whole lot on the fingerboard of the fretted bass, because obviously I'm going to need to recut the slots and do a whole bunch of stuff to that when I actually fret it. But the fretless one it's ready for its final finish. And this is going to look spectacular. I think I will begin with the headstocks, because I'm itching to see how this walnut comes up. I think it's going to look absolutely stunning. Let's find out. Okay, gloves are on. I'm not wearing a mask just for this first little bit, because I want to be able to commentate through what I'm seeing and what I'm doing for the first little bit. Water thin super glue from the dollar store. It's just the cheap sort that the label falls off as soon as you take it out of the packet. Works amazingly well as a finish. It is my finish of choice. These are just little polyester cloths. You buy these in a huge roll from the hardware store, and I then cut them into little sections because this is all you need to apply one coat. So we try not to be too wasteful of it, because I get the feeling it's pretty environmentally, it's not great stuff. But yeah, it is what it is, and it's perfect for this. So let's see how we go. Super glue on walnut, take 1. Ooh. Wow, okay. Well, it's just soaked in immediately. Let's give it another coat. By the time I get about 6 or 7 coats into this and it starts to actually build a finish on top of the wood, that's going to polish up like an absolute treat. I quite like the way the logos come out as well. Oh, okay, super glue is drying, and it's getting very hot in my hand. That cloth is spent. I'll drop it on the ground over there, because I don't want to throw it in the bin. I've never heard of super glue causing an exothermic fire before, but I believe it could happen. Right, it is time to get the mask on, and then we get into the real business end of finishing the entire necks, and that's going to produce an amount of gas that it is simply not safe to breathe, so bear with me. It's curing too fast. It's going hot in the glove. It's gluing the pad to the glove, and I can't really work like this. So I'm going to have to wait until it cools down a bit. See, it's already dry. Already absolutely dry. Which is great if I didn't need protective clothing, which I do, because now I'm breathing it in. Hold that thought. Alright, it is the next day, and these have about 7 or 8 coats on them now. I had to stop yesterday afternoon because it was just too hot. The glue was just setting instantaneously in the pad. But I did a bit of work on them last night and got some good stuff on there. As I say, I put about 3 or 4 coats on, and then sanded out the bumps with some 400 grit, just lightly, just to take the top off, and then another 3 or 4 coats on top of that. The fretless board is coming up nicely. I've only had 1 coat on the back of the neck just to seal it. I'm going to do that when I seal the bodies. I'll properly finish these when I'm actually finishing the entire instruments. But certainly the fretless fingerboard, it's going to take a lot. So I just kept on going, and I need to fill this board up, fill all the grain in, because I need to do that before I can put the frets in. Now, putting the frets in is going to take a long time. I have made a list of all the procedures that go into putting frets into a bass guitar, or a regular guitar for that matter. It goes as follows. I need to recut the slots to their proper width, then sand and polish the board, clean the slots, radius the fret wire, cut the fret wire, nip the tang ends, install the frets, glue the frets, file the ends, fill the ends, mask off the board, level the frets, recrown the frets, polish the frets. And for some reason, most manufacturers will charge more for a fretless bass. The mind boggles. That is looking good. That is looking really, really nice. It is sanded out to 1500. It is smooth as. In fact, if you brush your hand lightly over it, I can't even feel the slots. If I push harder, then obviously I can feel them. But yeah, that's really nice. What happens when you recut the slots is that inevitably you get a little lip on either side which sort of comes up. You want to take all of that off because otherwise the fret simply won't go down all the way. But these are now perfectly flat. The slots need to be clean as well because again the fret won't go down all the way. As far as frets go, I have some of this stuff. I thought I got lucky on AliExpress and got quite a lot of stainless fret wire. I don't believe this is stainless. I think it's far too soft, but for the price I paid, who knows? It's what I have. It's what's going in here. But it is straight, and I need to bend it, and I have a fret bending jig that I made for about $7. Roller skate bearings, some nuts and bolts from the hardware store, and a block of what I believe is Iroko. Clamp that in the vise and just feed the fret wire in. Bend it to an appropriate diameter, cut it all to length, and then keep working down the list. Okay, now we wind up with nipping the fret tang ends off. This is actually very, very straightforward. Again, there are tools that you can use to do this that are, horrifically expensive, but I've got this thing here, and this is simply a sheet metal nipper, and I have taped on a very small piece of steel, and what that does is it supports the edge of the fret as it goes into the cutter. And I can't demonstrate this on the bench because it's extremely difficult to operate the thing on the bench, but bear with me a second. And you get a perfectly notched fret tang every single time. There may be a little bit of a burr that you can just clean up with a file, yeah, that's job done. Nice and simple. The sheet metal nibblers, I think they were about I think I got them on special for about $24, something like that. Much better than what you pay on certain websites anyway. Going to do all of the fret ends. They'll be ready to go in. Alright, the frets are in and the edges are trimmed, but we still need to file them back. Before I can file them back, I need to actually glue them in so that the filing doesn't dislodge them or move them around too much. Before I can glue them in, well, part of the process of gluing them in is that you dribble a little bit of super glue down the end. Now, inevitably, at various points, too much is going to go in and it's going to wind up dripping out the back or running down the neck and causing all sorts of issues. So what I do is I use some wood filler and I just plug up one end first. Let that dry, then I can dribble the super glue into those ends, let that dry, and then more wood filler in this end. Then we are ready to file the ends down. And note how carefully I make that motion, because I have cut my hand to ribbons before sort of doing this. They're very sharp at the moment, so you've got to be careful. But then this entire process is all about being careful. Alright, so that is the ends filed, and I also sanded off the extra wood filler, although I forgot to aim the camera at the work while I was doing it, so no points for cinematography for me. Anyway, levelling, crowning and polishing. Standard procedure. Masking tape takes longer than the actual levelling and crowning. But it's got to be done. Some people will use those little stainless protective things with a fret slot cut in it. I'm sorry, why? They just, like, you need a ton of them. You'd spend more time fiddling with those than you would just masking off the board. So that's what I'm going to have to do. I'll start by wrapping one around the edge though. So that when it comes time to peel it off, I've got one big long edge and I can just rip the whole thing off. I wonder if I can get it off in one piece. I don't know if I've ever done that before. Wow. Peeled the whole thing off in one piece? That almost never happens. I wonder if I should save this. It's done! It's done! It's a finished neck, except for the finish. It's an unfinished neck. It's a completed neck, let's call it that. With that out of the way, and this in the way, I can pretty much call these necks, basically, yeah, they're done. Right. Next video, I'm going to put these on the bodies. I'm also going to cut some cavities for the pickups, and that means I'm going to have to finish the pickups. And when I say finish the pickups, I mean put some finish on the pickups. The pickups are completed. You know what I mean. I hope you do, because I don't. See you tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for subscribing.